Welcome to the Nanvei Hakiki podcast. Everyone, the time has finally come. I honestly didn't even go back and check the calendar. Was it 2 years? 2.5? Less than that? I don't know. But after such a long break, a new chapter of the HxHManga is finally coming back. And that still feels unreal to say out loud. There were definitely times when I gave up hope. I really had moments where I thought, all right, that's it. HxH is probably not coming back. Togashi is done, the series is done, and we just have to accept it. Then he started posting rough drafts. Then a new volume got announced. Then we got a date for when the manga would return to the magazine. And now we're here. So let me tell you what I want to do in this episode. I'm going to give you a broad recap of what has happened in the manga after the 2011 anime stops. I am not going chapter by chapter. I'm not doing a microscopic breakdown. I'm going to stay focused on the main events, the storylines you need to remember, and the key ideas that matter when you jump back in. Because anyone who has read HxH already knows this. Trying to explain this material in full detail is almost impossible. If I ever sat down and did a truly detailed breakdown of everything from chapter 340 to around chapter 400, I could probably turn that into dozens of separate episodes. Seriously. That is how dense this material is. Even if each episode were half an hour long, I could still spend an absurd amount of time on it. So what we are doing here is different. This is the big picture version. The goal is to make you manga ready, not to drown you in every single panel. Still, even when I say big picture, this story has so much going on that I already know we're going to end up going deeper than I planned. That's just what happens with HxH. I really can't talk about this material without dividing it into major sections. In my head, there are 2 giant pillars once the anime ends. The first pillar is Beyond Netero and the Dark Continent side of the story. The second pillar is Kaken and the Succession War. And once those 2 pillars are standing, then everything else starts locking into place around them. Kurapika, the Zodiacs, Beyond's camp, Pariston, Jing, Hisoka, Crollo, the Phantom Troop, the Mafia on the ship, all of it. Let's start from the place where the anime leaves us. At the end of the 2011 adaptation, Jing finally meets Gon and casually drops one of the most important ideas in the entire series. He tells Gon that the world everyone knows, the world printed on maps, the world taught in schools, is only a tiny part of the real world. He also hints that what truly fascinates him is the rest of that world, the outside, the part beyond the known map. And after the anime ends, the manga finally begins to shine a light on what that means. The world we know in HxH is basically a small island inside a much larger reality. Beyond the oceans everyone recognizes, there are ancient lands, lands so old and so hostile to ordinary human life that they feel mythological. Those lands are the Dark Continent. And right away, a lot of the weirdest elements in HxH suddenly start making more sense. Things that seemed bizarre, even by this series' standards, start feeling less random and more like signs from a place humanity was never meant to safely touch. Chimera ants are one clear example. They are not just some strange species that happen to appear. They are creatures tied to the Dark Continent. Nanika, the thing inside a Luca, also feels tied to that realm. The farther you go into this material, the clearer it becomes that the known world is not the center of reality. It's the safe corner of reality. Human beings in this setting have tried to reach the Dark Continent many times, over 100 times, maybe hundreds depending on how you count it. After so many disasters, travel there basically became taboo. Officially, it is the kind of place you do not go to. Unofficially, people kept trying anyway. Now, in the HxH world, there are 5 great powers, the V5. Think of them like the world's dominant political bloc. Some mix of a superpower alliance and a global governing club. These countries are powerful enough that they don't just make rules for themselves. Their agreements effectively shape the whole world.
And because they are powerful, they also broke their own taboo. They secretly sent their own expeditions to the Dark Continent. Unlike most historical attempts, some of those illegal expeditions actually brought people back. But when I say brought people back, don't imagine success. Imagine something like 1,000 people going and only a handful returning. The kind of statistics where survival itself barely counts as a victory. Of the people who came back alive, only a few remained even remotely mentally stable. So then the obvious question comes up. If the Dark Continent is this horrible, why does anyone keep trying to go there? Because it also promises miracles. That is the seduction of the place. There are plants there unlike anything in the known world, plants that could cure diseases. There are resources that could transform technology, materials that seem almost supernatural, things that could provide energy without ordinary industrial processes, things that could extend life. The Dark Continent is a nightmare, yes, but it is also an irresistible treasure chest. Every civilization in history would want what it contains. But every time humanity reaches for those gains, it risks bringing a catastrophe back with it. And that leads us to one of the most important concepts in this whole section, the calamities. The Dark Continent has produced what people call the 5 calamities. And the important thing about them is that they are not just giant monsters you can punch harder than everybody else. They are not straightforward battles. They are horrors that attack human beings on a deeper level. They exploit greed, desperation, desire, instinct, and biology. They are calamities precisely because brute strength is not the real issue. One example that gets brought up is Bryon, the botanical weapon, still deeply mysterious. Another is Ai, the gaseous life form connected to Nanika. Its danger is not just power in a combat sense. Its danger is that it grants wishes in a way human beings are almost genetically incapable of resisting, and the price for those wishes becomes a slaughter. That is why these things are so frightening. They do not meet human beings on fair terms.
Another example is Zobei, the disease that grants immortality in the worst possible way, endless life without relief, a life of unending pain you cannot even escape by killing yourself. It is one of those ideas that perfectly captures what the Dark Continent represents in Hunter x Hunter. Even its gifts can feel like curses. So when people say the Dark Continent is humanity's forbidden frontier, that is not just hype. It is a place where the normal contract between curiosity and reward breaks down. You can gain incredible things from it, but what comes back may also destroy you, your country, or the entire human world. I wanted to lay that foundation clearly first, because otherwise we would keep circling back to it every few minutes. Once you understand what the Dark Continent is, what the calamities are, what the V5 is, and why people keep trying to go there anyway, the rest of the story starts to move much more cleanly. Kaken makes its move. After Netero dies, we are already in a strange place politically. Pariston Hill and Ging Freakses are no longer among the 12 Zodiacs, so the group is down 2 people. Then the whole world gets hit by a major media event, a public announcement from the Kaken Empire. Kaken, in the Hunter x Hunter world, feels a bit like a rising imperial power, something with echoes of China as an inspiration, though not a one-to-one parallel. The important thing is that it is not part of the V5, but it is becoming so influential that it can no longer be treated as just another country. Its ruler, Nasubi Huigoru, makes a massive announcement. Kaken is going to carry humanity toward the Dark Continent. And what makes this so shocking is that he is not talking about sending a quiet research team. He is talking about something much bigger, almost a migration, almost colonization. Nasubi himself comes across in a very strange way at first. He has a design and presence that feel almost theatrical, even goofy if you look only at the surface. But the deeper the story goes, the more you realize that he is actually one of the darkest, most frighteningly important characters in this whole saga.
In that speech, he says something to the effect that the old powers have grown stagnant, and that the future belongs to emerging powers now. He frames Kaken as the one bold enough to open a new world for humanity. Then he drops the real bombshell. The man who will lead this endeavor is Beyond Netero, son of HxNetero. That reveal lands like a nuclear explosion. The Zodiacs are stunned. The public loses its mind. Beyond himself appears and gives exactly the kind of speech you would expect from someone like him. He is charismatic, intense, and clearly dangerous. He basically says that anyone with the courage to challenge the unknown can stand behind him, and that whatever obstacles appear, he will crush them. The line sounds heroic on the surface, but the implication is obvious. He isn't just talking about physical obstacles, he is talking about political and bureaucratic resistance too. Around the same time, Beans, Netero's old secretary, reveals that HxNetero actually left behind 2 recordings, not just one. One of them was meant specifically for the Zodiacs if a man ever appeared claiming to be Netero's son. In other words, Netero anticipated Beyond's return to the board. Cheadle, who is now leading the Hunter Association, also brings urgent news. The V5 has already sent a mission order: capture Beyond Netero. Why? Because Kakin has just publicly challenged the global order. The V5 had effectively forbidden this kind of Dark Continent expedition, and now Kakin has ignored that taboo in front of the whole world. Then the recording plays, and HxNetero confirms it plainly. Yes, Beyond really is his son. And then he says something incredibly revealing. He admits that he himself once reached the Dark Continent. He explains that the Dark Continent is the kind of place where humanity does not truly have a chance to win. He says his own thrill in life came from competition, from putting himself against an opponent and testing whether he could prevail. Even if the chance of victory were tiny, that chance mattered to him. But the Dark Continent did not offer that kind of challenge. It was not a duel. It was not a proper fight. It was a realm where human beings are simply outmatched as a species. Then he contrasts himself with Beyond.
Isaac says that he sought competition, while Beyond seeks sheer resolve. Isaac went there and thought, we should not come back. Beyond went there and thought, when are we going again? That difference tells you almost everything you need to know. Beyond is not someone who needs a fair fight. He is someone who is obsessed with going forward. He is the kind of man who cannot be talked out of a frontier once he has chosen it. So Netero's final order is not stop him. He knows that is impossible. His order is go with him, stay close. And if there is something to be discovered there, discover it before he does. That is one of the most important instructions the Hunter Association receives in the entire arc. Beyond turns himself in. Here is the amazing part. While all of this is happening, Beyond effectively predicts how the V5 will move. He walks into the Hunter Association and surrenders himself. He does not do this because he is beaten. He does it because he understands the political board better than almost everyone in the room. He knows the V5 will want him restrained. He also knows they will eventually have to use him, so he steps in early and lets them think they are in control. And what happens next proves he was right. The V5 realizes that a direct military response to Kakin is dangerous. The public is excited. People all over the world want in on the expedition. If the V5 attacks too aggressively, it risks social and political blowback. But if it allows Kakin to go alone and Kakin succeeds, then Kakin might come back holding knowledge and resources powerful enough to upset the global balance forever. So they choose a compromise. They bring Kakin into the circle. The V5 becomes the V6. Kakin is folded into the global power structure, and the Hunter Association is assigned to supervise the expedition from the inside, with Beyond effectively kept under their watch. Beyond saw that coming. There is even a great exchange around the issue of civilian safety. Cheadle initially tries to frame the expedition as too dangerous, especially with 250,000 civilians being transported on a giant whale-shaped ship. Beyond more or less warns her that if she leans on that excuse too hard, the V5 will just force the association into the mission anyway and remove that excuse from the table, and that is basically what happens.
Now, the formal plan for the voyage matters a lot, so let me lay it out clearly. The public story is that Kakin is taking humanity to the Dark Continent, but the actual route is more deceptive than that. Before anyone reaches the true shoreline of the Dark Continent, there is another huge landmass called the New Continent. The public passengers, the civilians, the colonists, are meant to disembark there. Kakin can then say, here you are, a new world, while the true Expeditionary Corps continues onward from there toward the actual Dark Continent. So even the structure of the voyage itself contains a kind of lie. And Beyond is the public face of this whole venture. He knows Kakin values him because he is the man who can turn Nasubi into a world historical figure. That is why he can be smug. That is why he can talk to the Zodiacs the way he does. He knows they are going to need him. The man is fixated on one thing only: what happens after landing. The journey itself barely interests him. What matters to him is reaching the Dark Continent proper. Beyond's people, Periston and Jing. Beyond has not been idle during all the years HxNetero was alive. He has spent decades preparing for this. Since his father was blocking him openly or indirectly, Beyond used that time to gather exactly the kind of people he would need for a true Dark Continent operation. Elite fighters, scholars, specialists, linguists, all kinds of experts whose value would matter once humanity stepped outside the known world. And the man effectively running that organization beneath Beyond is Periston Hill. At that point, the manga makes something clear that had been lurking in the background for a long time.
Periston is not just a chaotic political troll. He really is tied to Beyond's side. He has influence all over the Hunter Association, and even worse, he has something he can use as geopolitical leverage. The association is holding around 5,000 chimera ant hybrids in quarantine on an island facility. The group overseeing that containment is effectively loyal to Periston. That means Periston can hint at something horrifying. If the world does not go along with Beyond's path, maybe those chimera ants stop being a contained problem. It's a brilliant and disgusting form of leverage. And then we get one of the most Ging Freaks' developments imaginable.
Ging, who had already stepped away from the Zodiacs, tracks Periston down and reaches Beyond's camp. Why? Because Ging wants the Dark Continent more than almost anyone. If there is somebody in this story who might want it even more than Beyond, the host's feeling is that it might be Ging himself. But Ging is not reckless in the same way Beyond is. He does not want the Hunter Association or the human world cornered by Periston's hostage politics either. So Ging chooses not to oppose the expedition from the outside. He inserts himself into the operation. He goes to Beyond's base, gets involved with the team, and then does what Ging always does. He wins people over through sheer ability. Through intelligence, knowledge, adaptability, and charisma, he earns the respect of Beyond's people. There is even a point made that one of their ancient language specialists shows up, and Ging seems to know those dead languages even better. He is paying some people, impressing others, earning loyalty in different ways, and gradually placing himself where he can keep watch. And after that, ironically, he becomes even more mysterious. Once the voyage actually begins, we know he should be somewhere in this machinery, but exactly how he intends to reach the Dark Continent is not fully clear. There is also the Don Freaksis angle. The manga brings up the existence of a centuries-old travel record, long treated almost like fantasy literature, that talks about the Dark Continent and describes things tied to the calamities and the coastline. In other words, there may already be a historical Freaks connection to that forbidden world. Even if the host does not dwell on it for long here, the implication is huge. Leorio and Kurapika return. Now let's shift to the people we know more intimately. Cheadle goes directly to Leorio and tells him to join the Zodiacs. She needs someone she can trust. And because she is a medical hunter, she also frames the journey in terms that matter to Leorio. She basically tells him, if we really reach the Dark Continent, the medical knowledge there could dwarf everything the current world knows. Compared to what might be learned out there, ordinary medicine could look primitive. That's enough to pull Leorio in.
Then Cheadle tells him there is still another open seat among the Zodiacs, and she wants him to bring in the one person he trusts most. Gon and Killua are out of this game. That leaves Kurapika. So Leorio recommends Kurapika, and Misaistum, the crime hunter, the prosecutor-like Zodiac with the ox theme, goes to find him. And when we reunite with Kurapika, he is in a very different place from where we left him. A long time has passed since York knew. Greed Island happened, Chimera Ant happened, the election happened. Gon recovered. Life moved on. During that time, the Nostrad family collapsed. Neon Nostrad lost the value that made the family special after Krollo stole her fortune-telling ability. The family lost status, the father lost his footing, Neon herself is gone, and Kurapika has effectively risen to the head of what remains. He moves like a mafia boss now. He wears suits instead of the more traditional Coretta look. He has his own place, his own network, and his whole life has narrowed around recovering the scarlet eyes of his clan. Misaistum arrives, his men get stopped by the guards, and we get a glimpse of Misaistum's ability. He flashes a card tied to his power, and suddenly the room is restrained by something the other people cannot even properly see. The host mentions that if this is only one taste of what the Zodiacs can do, then their full set of abilities must be wild. When Kurapika comes down the stairs, the whole atmosphere is different. Misaistum politely explains that Leorio recommended him, and that the Hunter Association wants him aboard for the Dark Continent journey. Kurapika, with perfect politeness, says thank you for the offer and declines. He basically gestured toward the door. Then Misaistum says he heard Kurapika is looking for his clan's eyes. Kurapika hears that as a threat. He turns back, his eyes go scarlet. He loosens his tie slightly and tells Misaistum to think very carefully about his next sentence, because it may cost him his life. That moment is such a perfect reminder of where Kurapika is psychologically. He is all edge now, all control, all pressure. Misaistum immediately clarifies. He says he knows where some of the eyes are, and if Kurapika accepts the offer, he will tell him. That is what changes everything.
The crucial detail is the fourth Kakin prince, Seridnich Hu. He is exactly the kind of collector Kurapika would despise, the kind who treats human remains, eyes, heads, bodies, and grotesque trophies as objects in an elite collection. Mizai tells Kurapika that the Kakin royal family, including this prince, is going on the voyage. If Kurapika does not go now, he may never get another chance to reach that collection. For Kurapika, that is enough. There is no real choice. He accepts and becomes one of the Zodiacs. The Hunter exams and the Hidden Mole. Before the ship even departs, the Hunter Association runs into another crisis. There are not enough hunters on hand to properly manage the scale of this expedition, so they need accelerated recruitment. That means emergency hunter exams, fast-tracked intake, and a serious risk that Periston and Beyond's people will use that opportunity to infiltrate the operation. Kurapika becomes invaluable here. He works closely with Mizai, using his judgment chain and his own intelligence to help screen candidates. One of the interesting details here is that he discovers he can even detect lies through recorded footage or video feeds under the right conditions, as long as Emperor time is active. That is a scary upgrade. Because of that cooperation, none of Periston's candidates managed to slip through the recruitment process. There is even a moment where Periston, hearing that one more of his people failed, and then another failed, and then another failed, gives respect to the Zodiac who replaced him, even without knowing for sure it was Kurapika driving the process. He basically says, "Whoever took my place is solid, not one of my people got through." But then the story asks a smarter question. If they are so worried about infiltrators outside the association, are they sure there isn't already an infiltrator inside the Zodiacs themselves? Thanks to Kurapika's lie detection work, they realize one of the Zodiacs really is compromised. Sayu, the monkey Zodiac, is tied to Beyond's side.
And then, because this is Hunter x Hunter, the situation gets even more twisted. The Zodiacs confront Beyond over the coming public departure event. He is supposed to appear in a public send-off with the Kakin royal family. Mizai wants him to identify the insider in exchange for permission. Kurapika watches through surveillance. Beyond says he does not know. And Kurapika realizes he is telling the truth. Why? Because the inside man was not planted by Beyond directly. Periston arranged it on his own. He pulled Sayu to that side without even telling Beyond. That is the level of layered scheming we are dealing with now. Beyond has plans. Periston has plans inside Beyond's plans. Beyond, for his part, is still arrogant enough to tell the Zodiacs that if they don't agree to let him appear publicly, Kakin will simply force the issue through political channels. He knows his value to Nasubi. He knows Kakin wants him in the spotlight. That whole section tells you something essential about Beyond and Periston together. If one of them is dangerous, the combination is terrifying. The voyage plan and the new continent. At this point, it is worth restating how the voyage is meant to work. The giant whale ship is carrying 250,000 civilians, but those civilians are not, in truth, being taken all the way to the real Dark Continent. Before the deadliest waters begin, before the true maritime boundary around the Dark Continent proper, there is that large intermediary island known as the New Continent. The public passengers will be offloaded there. Kakin will present that as the great frontier destination. The real Dark Continent expedition, the one involving the Hunter Association, Beyond, Morel, the association's people, and the true specialists, will continue onward from there by different means. So the lie is already built into the journey itself. Kakin can brag that it has opened the frontier to humanity, while still concealing the true final leg from most of the people on board. And now, finally, we get to Kakin's internal nightmare, the succession war. Kakin's king, Nasubi, has 14 legitimate children from multiple queens, and Kakin has an ancient tradition, the succession war, tied to the seed urn ceremony.
Every legitimate heir puts blood into this ritual vessel. Then each one places a hand inside. A being emerges, something almost fairy-like at first glance, but bound to a darker system. And the rite grants that prince a guardian spirit beast, essentially a Nen beast devoted to that heir. The rules and deeper mechanics get very complex, but the important point is simple. Once the succession process is fully underway, the princes are trapped inside a lethal inheritance struggle. Only one may remain as heir to the throne. Even the naming is interesting. Although some of the heirs are women, they are all referred to as princes in the political sense, because each of them has equal claim to the throne. These guardian spirit beasts make the whole thing far stranger than an ordinary political assassination game. They are bizarre, often disturbing creations, and the atmosphere becomes almost berserk-like at times. There are rules about what can directly attack what, and indirect killing becomes crucial. The series is layering ritual, monarchy, nen law, espionage, and murder into one single system. Naturally, the older princes begin with enormous advantages. They have status, money, influence, private guards, military ties, and nen-capable subordinates. The first prince, for example, has real power inside Kakin's military structure itself. The upper princes are not just heirs, they are already political forces. The weaker princes have to search for outside protection. That is why they start posting calls for bodyguards, specifically pro-hunters. The Hunter Association panics a bit when this starts, because after all the work they did to prevent Periston's people from slipping into the expedition through emergency exams, now those same people could potentially get onto the ship by being hired as royal guards. Kurapika, however, is thinking about something else entirely. He wants access to the fourth prince. He believes the ninth prince, Hulkenberg, seems like the kind of figure he could work with, because Hulkenberg appears more reasonable and has a better relationship with the fourth prince than most. Kurapika starts analyzing the recruitment notices, trying to guess which listing belongs to Hulkenberg.
At the same time, he calls in trusted people to scatter themselves across the royal battlefield as guards for different princes, so they can keep contact and support one another from inside the system. And the names here are fantastic. Hanzo from the old exam days, Biscuit, Melody, Izunavi, Kurapika's nen teacher, Basho from the Nostrate side. It becomes a very practical network of familiar faces. There is even a funny detail with Biscuit. Killua apparently recommended her, and Kurapika flatters her a little, which works beautifully, because as Killua essentially knows, praise gets results with Biscuit very quickly. But then Kurapika's careful plan goes sideways. He thinks he has identified Hulkenberg's call for guards. He analyzes the wording and convinces himself that only a prince with that kind of pride and bearing would frame the request that way. He arrives, and it isn't Hulkenberg. It is the 14th prince, the baby, Prince Wobble. Wobble is still an infant, carried by Queen Oito, who is also the weakest and most vulnerable queen in the entire hierarchy. She immediately understands why someone like Kurapika would have been drawn by the wording of the request. She and her people deliberately wrote it so that it would sound like the kind of listing a more desirable prince might post, because they were desperate to attract the best guard they possibly could. And when you look at their position, that desperation makes perfect sense. In a war where all the princes but one are expected to die, what chance does a newborn baby have? Queen Oito is powerless compared to the other queens. Her child cannot protect himself. Her faction has almost no weight. She desperately needs someone competent, someone honest, someone strong. So Kurapika listens to her, and the whole tone changes. She explains the succession war to him openly. She does not posture, she does not pretend. She speaks with the desperation of a mother who knows her child is marked for death if nothing changes. And Kurapika responds in kind. He tells her that he will protect her and the prince with his life, but in return she must help him reach the fourth prince. She agrees she will do whatever she can. That is the deal that pulls Kurapika fully into the succession war. He is no longer merely a man pursuing revenge. He becomes the shield of a mother and a baby in the middle of a royal slaughter. And this is one of the reasons Kurapika's role in the current manga is so powerful. The object of his hatred is still in front of him, but now actual innocence is physically in his arms. There is even a moment where he holds the baby and you can feel the emotional shift. A bond forms. The mission stops being abstract. The Black Whale as a caste system. The Black Whale is not just a ship, it is practically a floating city. The host makes a really useful comparison here. Imagine each floor of the ship as its own neighborhood. This thing is carrying 250,000 people. It is massive, and it is organized according to a kind of class or caste system. The lower floors are the worst. The fifth deck, the bottom, is basically hell. The host compares it to a prison cafeteria kind of environment, a place full of danger, filth, and desperation. A place so abandoned that you almost get the feeling no one even bothered assigning adequate doctors there. If someone dies there, they die there. The upper sections are where privilege, power, security, and wealth are concentrated. And because the succession war is happening inside that structure, every move is shaped not only by nen and assassination, but also by class, infrastructure, and access. This matters because Kurapika is trying to protect Wobble and Queen Oito in a closed environment where information, movement, and alliance building are all limited by physical layout and social hierarchy. And while all of that is building, Hunter x Hunter decides that this still is not enough chaos. Hisoka and Trillo. Then comes one of the biggest shocks in the post-anime manga, Hisoka versus Trillo. I am not going to unpack every mechanic of that fight because, honestly, if I really tried to explain it in full, we would be here forever. It is that detailed. But in broad terms, it is a brilliant fight. Trillo spends a long time setting it up. There is even the sense from Hisoka's side that Trillo effectively spent about a month avoiding him and preparing the battlefield in his head before finally saying, "All right, now we fight." Hisoka's attitude is basically, "I have already won this in theory, so there is no reason to rush." Hisoka, of course, accepts immediately.
And once the fight starts, Chrollo turns Heaven's Arena into a nightmare. He uses borrowed abilities to manipulate the crowd, clone bodies, direct civilians like puppets or zombies, and even turn those human masses into explosive traps. That is the key feeling of the fight. It is not a clean duel. It is an overwhelming, dirty, psychologically crushing environment where hundreds of ordinary bodies can be weaponized against one target. Imagine waves of screaming civilians flooding towards you, some of them ready to explode, while Chrollo uses every opening to land another hit. That is what Hisoka is dealing with. Hisoka resists hard. He really does. But eventually the fight pushes him into a seemingly hopeless situation. The crowd piles on him, the final blast goes off. It looks over. But right before death, Hisoka gives Bungee Gum an order. He uses it on his own organs, specifically as a kind of post-mortem instruction, telling it to restart his heart and lungs after he dies. So the crowd crushes him, the explosion goes off, the body is left there. Maki, Shalnark, Kortopi, and others are around afterward. There is even a small detail that Maki had been paid by Hisoka in advance to fix up his body if things went badly. Apparently her personal code is simple. If she took the money, she does the job, whether the client lived or died. Then, Bungee Gum activates. Hisoka comes back. And not only does he come back changed. Post-mortem Nen boosts him. He starts using Bungee Gum and Texture Surprise in ways that feel even more extreme than before. Missing fingers, he makes replacements. Damaged limbs, he compensates with Nen. It feels like he has crossed a threshold. He grabs Maki, binds her to the floor, and leaves her alive for a reason. He wants her to deliver a message. Tell Chrollo, the hunt has started. He is furious, and not just because he lost. He is furious because he lost on Chrollo's terms, through preparation, borrowed abilities, and a full team structure. So he changes his own rules completely. He decides Chrollo will never again get the comfort of borrowing his friend's abilities to build a perfect stage. If Hisoka wants revenge, he will kill the spiders one by one and remove those options from the board. And he immediately acts on that decision. He kills Kortopi. He kills Shalnark.
He catches them at a moment when, because of how Chrollo's stolen abilities work, they are in a vulnerable state without those Nen abilities active for themselves. The scene is brutal. Hisoka comes out where Kortopi should have been. Shalnark realizes what has happened almost too late. There is a severed head. Then, death. That is the moment the entire Phantom Troop gets dragged into the voyage. Hisoka swears to hunt them. The troop swears to hunt him. And then word arrives that Hisoka has boarded Kakin's Dark Continent expedition ship. So naturally, the troop boards too. Everyone boards the same disaster. At this point, take a step back and look at what is all sharing one vessel. There is a fake public migration toward a new world. There is a true Dark Continent expedition hidden behind it. There is a royal succession war with 14 princes and guardian spirit beasts. There is Kurapika protecting a baby prince while trying to reach Tsariadnich and recover the Scarlet Eyes. There is the Hunter Association trying to keep everything from collapsing. There is Beyond Netero, under watch, but still central to the mission. There is Periston's influence still poisoning the structure. There is Hisoka somewhere on board. There is the Phantom Troop actively searching for him. And to make things even worse, there is also the underworld. When the story turns toward the ship's lower decks, we learn that 3 major mafia families basically control those floors. The 3rd deck belongs to the Hale Lee family. The 4th deck belongs to the Shiyu family. The 5th deck belongs to the Char family. These are not just generic gangs. Their leadership is bound up with Kakin's illegitimate bloodlines. The leaders carry signs of that status, and their positions tie the criminal underworld directly back into the royal structure.
One of the heads looks very much like Prince Lazarus. Another, Broccoli, runs Char. And then there is Morena, who becomes one of the most important wildcards in the entire ship storyline.
Normally, there is some kind of balance among these mafia powers, but Marina's side is not functioning like a normal criminal syndicate. They are effectively becoming serial killers with a system, a cult-like murder engine that keeps escalating. They are not just dangerous because they are violent, they are dangerous because they have abandoned ordinary logic. So the other mafia factions realize they need outside help. That is where the Phantom Troop enters the underworld side of the story in a big way. The Mafia learns that the troop is after Hisoka, and because the Mafia has enormous influence over the ship's internal movement, they make a proposal. They tell the troop, "We will help you find Hisoka if you help us wipe out Marina's Hylie family first." But of course, because this is Hunter x Hunter, they are not being straightforward there either. They have already found Hisoka, and they give him a different offer. They basically say, "Let the troop handle Hylie first. We'll move you to a better upper level where you can stay comfortable and wait. We know you want to hunt the troop, and the troop wants to hunt you. Let us get what we need first, and then we can give you what you want too." Hisoka agrees. So now both sides are being maneuvered inside the ship by underworld interests. The troop is being sent toward Hylie. Hisoka is being repositioned elsewhere. The ship becomes even more of a maze. And the host points out something fascinating about the troop's interaction with Hylie. As they investigate this family of senseless killers, they begin to feel that Hylie resembles them in a twisted way, specifically the troop's own younger, angrier days, when they were full of hate and capable of killing without looking back. That then leads into one of the most emotionally important revelations in the recent manga, a Phantom Troop flashback that shows how tragic their origins actually were and how they became the people they are. Again, this recap does not sink all the way into that material, because even by itself it deserves real space, but its importance is clear. The troop is not just a hit squad chasing Hisoka. Their presence on the ship is tied into their own history now too. The troop splits up. On the ship, the Phantom Troop splits into smaller groups.
Krollo, Machi, Bolinanov, and Shizuku head upward and then disappear from immediate view. Another group, Thinks, Nobunaga, and Phaeton, becomes more directly entangled with the mafia investigation into Haley. Franklin, in one of the coolest small character beats, just plants himself in a cafeteria on the 5th deck and waits. When the mafia asks him why he is sitting there instead of running around after Hisoka, Franklin basically says, "Hisoka is hunting us too. If I stay here long enough, he will come. Let him come. We'll fight." That is such a Franklin thing to do. And meanwhile, everything just keeps stacking. Kurapika is dealing with princes, queens, nen beasts, assassination attempts, alliances, and the 4th prince's collection. The association is dealing with security, Beyond, and the formal expedition. The troop is dealing with Hisoka and Haley. Hisoka is dealing with the troop. The mafia is dealing with succession politics and its own survival. And this is exactly why the host keeps saying this material is too big to fully cover in one sitting. Because every time you explain one lane of the story, 3 more lanes open right next to it. Kurapika's position at this point. By the time you zoom out and look at where Kurapika stands, it is almost unbearable. He knows the 4th prince has the rest of the Scarlet Eyes. He knows there is even a head in Seridnich's room that evokes Pyro, his closest childhood friend. He knows he is trapped in a war where one wrong move could get him, the queen, or the baby killed. He knows the troop is somewhere on this ship, or at least that possibility exists. And Mizystem even has to think carefully about whether telling him that would help or simply shatter his focus at the worst possible time. That is the rope Kurapika is walking on. He is balancing revenge, duty, secrecy, emotional exhaustion, and the survival of innocence all at once. This is why so many readers find this part of the manga so gripping. It isn't just Kurapika is back. It is Kurapika under maximum pressure, in a setting where every part of his old trauma and every part of his present responsibility have been forced into the same confined space. Where the story pauses.
The host eventually reaches the point where he has to admit that even after talking for such a long time, he is still basically covering only the setup.
And that is true. Everything I have described so far is, in many ways, still preparation. It is the story building the battlefield. It is the voyage beginning. It is the alliances forming. It is the factions learning where each other are. It is the troop entering the underworld layers. It is Kurapika entrenching himself in the royal war. It is the association trying to stop collapse before it happens. In other words, Hunter x Hunter stops at a point where almost every fuse has been lit, but not all of them have reached the powder yet. And honestly, that is the best way to describe the feeling of this whole post-anime material. It is not just the next arc, it is a pressure chamber. It is a giant whale-shaped city moving toward a false continent, carrying a royal murder ritual, a forbidden expedition, the world's most dangerous political schemers, a revenge-driven Kurapika, an unleashed Hisoka, the Phantom Troop, and a criminal underworld that has already started mutating into something worse. That is why even a broad recap of this material ends up being huge. The story itself is huge, and I still feel like I have only given you the skeleton. There are entire episodes worth of content hidden inside the princes alone. There are so many details within the Succession War that if I tried to tell you everything now, we would lose the shape of the bigger picture. So for this catch-up, the thing I most want to leave you with is orientation.
If you remember the Dark Continent and why it matters, if you remember that Kakin has forced the door open politically, if you remember that Beyond and Periston are dangerous in different ways, if you remember that Ging inserted himself into the machine, if you remember that Leorio and Kurapika have both returned to the center, if you remember that Kurapika is protecting Wobble while trying to reach Tsarednich, and if you remember that Hisoka and the Phantom Troop are both somewhere on the Black Whale while the Mafia floors are boiling underneath them, then you are in very good shape. That is the mental map you need. Everything else is detail layered on top of that map. And that is also why the return of Hunter x Hunter feels so exciting. It is not just that a beloved manga came back after a long silence. It is that it came back with one of the most complicated and dangerous story structures it has ever built, and somehow it still works. So yes, the wait has been long. Yes, there were moments when it felt like it might never come back. But now that it has, this is the state of the board. The horizon that Ging opened at the end of the anime was real. The manga answered that horizon by saying, "The world is much larger than you thought, much darker than you thought, and much harder to survive than you thought." And now all of those truths are moving toward each other on one ship.